Well, the Liberals have a big fight ahead, not only to defeat Labor, but to win back inner city seats from the Teals. The prize seat of Wentworth in Sydney's east, currently held by Allegra Spender. Now, in a historic move, the New South Wales Liberals have selected their first ever female candidate for the seat, which was, of course, previously held by Malcolm Turnbull. Former Deloitte consultant and businesswoman Ro Knox joins me now for her first interview. Ro, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sharri, thanks so much for having me on the show.
Now, look, before we get into some of the trickier questions, can you tell us a bit about your background and how you came to be here?
Thanks, Sharri. Yes, I studied law and I then went straight into management consulting. I worked in Chicago and New York with Deloitte Consulting, and I worked in financial services. So we worked for some of the biggest clients on Wall Street. Fantastic experience. Then a group of us left and we formed a small venture capital firm where we invested in pre-market entrepreneurs, and now I'm a small business owner. I've lived in Wentworth for almost 20 years and I'm passionate about the community, and I want to bring that big business experience, the entrepreneur experience, the small business experience and my passion and knowledge of the seat to solving the great problems that are facing Wentworth and indeed the country.
Yeah, and you've left out the important fact you're a mum, of course, as well.
I am a mum.
2 teenage kids.
Yes, I am. The most important job, some could argue.
Now, let's start with the budget that Jim Chalmers handed down last night. I mean, as a former venture capitalist, you might have a view on the $22 billion Made in Australia program. What do you think about it?
I certainly have a strong view on that. My view is it's very unusual for a government to be investing this heavily. And there's been some significant concerns around the due diligence in terms of the industries that have been invested in. And I just know, as a previous venture capitalist, that it's really important to have a huge amount of transparency in what you invest in, and also that you have a really mixed portfolio of investments, and this feels very targeted.
And like they've picked some companies, particularly that one quantum computing company, for $1 billion instead of diversifying well, if they had to invest taxpayer funds in a risky area at all.
Absolutely, very unusual, and very unusual to just do one geographic area as well.
What about this debate that's unfolding about whether the budget will be inflationary? What do you think?
I have a lot of concerns the budget is inflationary, and we know that inflation is the biggest driver in the cost of living crisis, this cost of living crisis that has been created by the Labor Albanese government, and I'm very concerned it's going to continue that inflation. I'm also concerned in the budget there's no growth story, and we don't talk about productivity at all, and the Liberals are constantly talking both about growth, productivity, and also obviously the vital importance of reducing inflation.
Yeah, although productivity, of course, has been lagging for the best part of a decade. Look, the seat you're running in Wentworth has one of the highest Jewish populations in the country. Anti-Semitism has been a major issue. What's your view on the Albanese government's response to this crisis?
I think it's been very poor and very weak leadership. We've seen a huge rise in anti-Semitism since the October 7th attacks. And this has been very, very concerning for our community. And not only because of the anti-Semitism, because it's indicative of a lack of social cohesion that we're seeing throughout the country. And that's because of the weak leadership by this Albanese Labor government.
Allegra Spender signed a letter calling for funding to resume to UNRWA despite its clear links to Hamas. Do you think the federal government should be funding UNRWA?
I don't. Israel has shown clear evidence that UNRWA was involved in the attacks by Hamas on October the 7th. And the view of the Teals for signing that letter was that there was no other way to get humanitarian aid into Gaza, and we know for a fact that the Americans were building water jetties. A day later they were doing airdrops, so that view that was the only way to get it in was completely unfounded, and I think it was very disappointing that letter was signed.
Do you support Netanyahu's move into Rafah to defeat Hamas?
So I understand Israel's main objectives are to defeat Hamas, and I understand that. I'm not a military expert, and my view is we need to focus on bringing home the 132 hostages, and I'll leave that up to the military experts whether moving into Rafah will actually achieve that or not.
So you don't object to Netanyahu going into Rafah on a ground invasion?
Well, I think Israel has the right to defend itself. Israel is its own nation. It's able to make those military decisions as it sees fit.
All right. Look, the Liberals' campaign in Wentworth at the last federal election was highly criticised. What are you planning to do to defeat Allegra Spender, and how do you think she's gone as an MP?
So I think the issue with the Teals in general is many people voted for them at the last election because they thought they were independent. But unfortunately, the Teals vote overwhelmingly with the Greens and Labor. And we know in our seat of Wentworth, the biggest issue, I've been talking to small businesses, I've been talking to people on the ground, the biggest issue for Wentworth is the cost of living crisis, which is caused by the Labor Albanese government.
But how do you think Allegra Spender has gone as a local MP for Wentworth?
I think she's been unable to deliver because the Teals don't have a seat at the table and they're unable to get any legislation through the Parliament. So she's been unable to deliver.
All right, Ro Knox, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you so much, Sharri.